Everybody, as I have promised you, every single week, we're going to bring you some amazing person in finance, business that has done something different with their life, has achieved something great, and even just follows the rules of discipline and focus. Today, I'm talking to Gary Cardone. You might know his brother. You might know him. I don't know how you found him, but he's a very interesting person. I've been watching him for the last few years. He did a bunch of different things. He's turned some failures into successes. And with that being said, thank you so much for coming to the show. Welcome, Gary. How are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Great. Glad to be here. Thank you, Sam.
The first thing I wanted to discuss, right, is I know your dad passed away when you were young, right? My dad recently just passed away about a month ago. I can connect with you on that feeling. You know, I don't know how it gets easier, but how did you deal with the loss? Do you ever go back to that to this day? And you know, how did it change you as a person?
I think it was devastating. I mean, we were 8 or 9, I think 9 years old. He went to a hospital in Houston. We lived in Louisiana. He went to a hospital in Houston, never came back. It was, it was shocking, right? When you're that age, you don't really know what that means. All of a sudden, the guy that brought the Wall Street Journal home every day and read it while he had a cup of coffee or a whiskey or whatever he was drinking, wasn't there. My mom went into like total terror. You could tell she was uneducated, from an immigrant, Sicilian, had 5 kids, right? They were 5 years spread apart. So we had one daughter getting married, and then Grant and I were 8. Older brother was 14. He was a handful himself, and then an older sister. I think the real missing piece was that we had no alpha dogs show up after that. And I remember when I was involved looking at Enron's books in 2000, 2001, I had to write a white paper to my bosses, who, of course, wanted to buy Enron. They were the leader, and they were dying to buy this thing, right? This is their life's ambition. Oh, we get to run Enron. And my thesis was you cannot afford to buy Enron because there is no alpha dog at Enron. There's a bunch of pack wolves. And without an alpha dog, they're going to just run circles around us no matter what. You can buy them for a penny, but they're still going to kill you because they're like, I needed an alpha dog. I needed some uncles to show up, a policeman, a local guy. My mom would not remarry because her experience as a child was horrible with a stepmother, so she didn't bring any men into the family. But that meant that Grant and I, and a 14-year-old, had no alpha around us that basically could put discipline into us. And, my best teachers in school were considered to be the most draconian fascist teachers. It was like, hey, it's 8 o'clock start. If you show up at 8.0 seconds, you're late, leave. They were brutal. I loved that authority. And growing up in the first probably 10 or 15 years, in my mid-20s, started, seeing psychologists and, hey, why am I all screwed up? Why did I pick the wrong girls? Why, I'm just like a little bit of a chaos monkey. They kept telling me, well, your problem is you don't like authority. You don't respect authority, blah, blah. You got a problem with authority. And then years later, I met a really great psychologist, and he said, you have a problem with weak authority. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, that's the problem. Because I love working for a great general, but I don't like working for generals who just have 4 stars on their lapel, but they did nothing to get there, right? They were appointed to that position. And if you ask any military guy, the people they really love working for, I have this thesis that says you cannot be a good leader if you have not been a great follower. You can't be a great general if you have never been a ground soldier. Because what people connect with me is that I'm not the typical corporate CEO business guy that talks about how cool I am and how great and every decision I've ever made is perfect. And it's messy. I'm scared most of the time. Life gets, there's many curveballs. I've made more mistakes than I've made successes. I think that's what people identify with. It's just the kind of rawness of reality. And there's just no, for me, it hasn't been an easy journey, but it's been the only journey that kept me interested, right? And I have to remain really interested. It sounds like you're very much the same way. You need to stay challenged, or you get bored, and then when I'm bored, I start creating a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's got to be all or nothing for me. It's funny. You just almost gave me some therapy. I like that you brought that up. Me and my dad had our battles at times, right? And I didn't fully understand why he was pressing me so much at times in my life. And, I'm not going to, I had this disdain sometimes, like, Dad, like, why can't we just, and we didn't always get along sometimes. He said, we're like two bulls in a pasture, man. It's hard for us to be in the same area, it's like, but I had a therapist. I did, when COVID happened, my life got ripped apart. I was working in TV. I was working for David Letterman's show. My next guest needs no introduction, where he was, doing all these interviews with famous known people, from Obama to Kanye West and you name it. And eventually he couldn't do the live shows because he didn't, they couldn't be around live people. A lot of TV shut down. And I was left with kind of, what do I do with my life here? My dad said, hey, could you move back home? I have a house I can't take care of anymore. He's like, I can't even stop by it, even though I'm 20 minutes away to pick up my pills at the doctor. And he said, could you please take care of it, really, at the end of the day? And I said, I don't think I can, Dad. I said, I got a life here in New York. I don't know. I got to think on it. And finally he looked at me and said, like, someone's going to move into that house. And like, and basically said, like, could you be the one? And what a blessing that was for me to move back into the house I grew up in. But I was like, I'm going to go to Boston where everyone goes to sleep. I was from New York City 20 years. It didn't make sense to me, but I eventually got therapy when I moved back home. And the therapist, funny, he gave me a story because I was always talking about my dad a lot at therapy. And he said, I'm going to tell you about my dad once. And the therapist did this, which is interesting. He's like, let me talk about it. And he said, my dad worked as a pharmacist. He was there 7 days a week. He said, I never saw him. He said, I came out the driveway just to see him come in every day. That's how much I loved him. He goes, he went to one of my baseball games. And he said, he looked at me and he said, you could have done better. And he made me realize how much I had, like, that I wanted the best, and like I was putting so much pressure on all the things that my dad didn't do. And he made me realize, man, look at all the things that my dad did do for me, and I became far more grateful. The last month of my dad's passing, we were so close. We talked all the time. His last phone call, I was in Austin, Texas at Consensus, and he called me to make sure I didn't leave something in the hotel room. That was his, like, he's like, look under the bed, make sure, because he knew I had all the equipment. And I was always, running a gun and working 7 days a week. And he wanted me to know, like, he cared, man. He always cared. And I reach out to the people in my trading group all the time and on my live stream. And they say, my dad passed when I was 14. I had 40 good years with my father. And I didn't want to make this all about my dad, but I wanted to make about gratitude, right? And turn those losses into wins. You know what I mean? And so I see that you started, I've been watching a bunch of interviews by you too. And it's funny, I'm very similar. I don't respect someone unless I think they're 100%. Like, I need a general. Like, you know what I mean? I want to see the guys been there and back. I want to see the scars. I want to see the war pain, right? If I don't see that, I don't take you seriously. You know what I mean? Like, I can hear this all day long. I got to see it. I see that in you, man. In every interview I ever saw, I'm telling you, like, I could tell when someone's been through it, and I can feel it in their pupils and their eyes. You give me that feeling. And so I was researching your company there, Cardback, is it right? There's
a few companies. So with my ex-wife, I built a business called Chargebacks.
Chargeback 911. Yeah.
911. It's held through Global Risk Technologies. It's a technology entity I own that buys companies. I've since exited that. See, that's a great example of to all your viewers, because I know you got a lot of entrepreneurs. There's an industry where two people who didn't know anything about the payments industry. I mean, I barely knew the difference between a credit and a debit card. Mm-hmm. We went into an industry that was 40 years old, controlled by a duopoly, MasterCard and Visa, and built a $400, $500, $600 million business, man. Like just solving a problem that everyone else accepted as this is a cost of doing business. I looked at it from my commodity experience and went, Well, it may have existed for years, but it can't continue to exist, and it cannot continue to grow. If a problem doesn't stop, it will continue until it consumes, it becomes parasitic to the host. And so the commodity background was like, there shouldn't be any breakage, much less 656 million chargeback events in the United States and Europe every year. So we just built a whole business around solving a problem, right? What I call filling a gap. And every industry, if your users, your watchers, viewers, look at any industry, if you studied it in great detail, you will find there is a white elephant, what I call the white elephant, like the uncle that shows up every 3 Thanksgivings. Nobody really wants them, but nobody has the guts to say, hey, don't come here. Every industry has a white elephant problem. Usually it has some characteristics to it that, hey, this is just the way this is just one of the problems. Mm-hmm. Crypto's going through some of this right now, right? Oh, that's just the problem. No, it's not. It's not necessary. And so I look for opportunities that are big gaping holes that no one else wants to confront, that you can look at and say, look, there's real value that I bring. And that's what I try to do. Hey, where can I bring value, whether it's with a relationship like you or whether it's in a business? Because I don't think if you don't bring value to a market, if your job is working for someone and you can't identify the value that company really drives and you can't articulate that in less than 2 sentences, I suggest you start looking for a new job, because the company's not going to be around because they're not meeting the needs, the real needs of the user. You can only take from people so long until you have to give. And so I just look for places where there's a lack, and if I have the skill, then I bring that added value to the marketplace and attempt to become meaningful and relevant in the industry. I think if you have to, in any industry, you have to become relevant. It's some meaningful way, like what you're doing, right? You have a whole host of people, you're relevant to them, you're bringing them great content, and the longer you do that, the more consistent. See, your consistency. I've got a bunch of people asking me to do whole podcast, set it up. I'm like, man, I'm disciplined to do that. Like, you got to be willing to do it every day, no matter what's happening. So that's just the way I look at the world. I think, you get shaped by your childhood and your belief systems. And my parents did a really, really great job in the first 6 or 7 years that we were around to at least establish the baseline of what's acceptable. We both went off the rails many times. And I think, I have a lot of weird sayings. And one of those sayings is, how do you know where the edge is? And it's a trick question, really. All the consultants go, well, you measure the edge. But I'm like, no. In order to know where the edge is, you have to be willing to go over it. Okay, like if you have not exceeded the very limits of the edge, you don't really know where the edge is. And the only time I know where the edge is when I get a speeding ticket. Oh, okay, I pushed the envelope a little too heavy. Okay, so then I pay, then I back up. And that's how all markets are formed, by the way. All new industries are formed with, hey, there are no boundaries. You're definitely not going to play in the middle of the fairway, right? Because there is no fairway. It's everything like crypto right now. It's just everything's pretty much the wild, wild west. And what are we doing? We're now putting the rails in, and we're defining where the fairway is. There'll be some people that will operate right in the middle, and there'll be some edge cases. The edge cases always make more money, but they also come with a lot of risk. And as that market matures, the boundaries start coming in, more players come in, which is really exciting. More players come in because there are more rails, there are more guideposts, and tools for managing where you are on that fairway, right, on that golf course, for lack of a better analogy. And if you notice, those are the businesses that I get involved with. I get involved with companies that are picks and shovel type activities that help build the rails. The chargeback business was designed to eradicate all chargebacks. And then we realized, oh my God, there are so many companies making billions of dollars from this. They don't want this problem to change, right? Because it's a P&L income stream. But that does not make it healthy, okay? Just because one company's making $1 billion and the other company that runs the business is making $1 billion, this problem will go away. It's probably going to get solved through other pathways. It does not look like it's going to get solved internally. I suspect that blockchain will help eradicate some of these problems. So that's why I kind of keep my feet in both the payments industry and the digital, what I call the digital industry. I don't use crypto. Like, I think cryptocurrency and all that, we should get away from some of this terminology because it's not the industry I'm in. I'm in the digital, what I call the digitization of planet Earth. And we are Uberizing. We are living in a world today where we will Uberize everything. Automobile use, home use. Me and my brother really agree vehemently on this, and we don't agree on everything. But you know, the way people look at real estate in this country is going to change radically. Most people should not own a home. Most people should rent. And I think the sooner we get off this 1940s banking advertising scheme, which was everyone should own a home. Well, no one owns a home in the United States. If you don't pay your taxes, your home goes away. So no one owns anything. Right? You have a mortgage, you have a responsibility to keep your debts up to the bank, but you also have to fix the roof, fix the yard, do the plumbing, do the painting. When you stick all of those fees over 20 years into owning a home, I think the return on that investment is really, really poor. I've got probably $12 million stuck in homes right now. Well, I could do so much more with that $12 million.
It's funny you said that because, like, I started with just being someone that did the same. Like, I basically started investing, right? Like, you know, I got into a silver stock, turned $2,500 into 10 grand. Then I threw the 10 grand into Canopy Grow Corp because I thought that the marijuana industry would develop and get bigger. We'd see it in all these different cities, which did happen, you know. And I was able to cash out of that. And then I found Bitcoin, and that's kind of like, I now like swing trade and day trade a little more, but I was mainly someone that could see maybe where things were going to go into the future. I think that was kind of like, at the time I didn't know it was a gift. I thought I was just absolutely kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Most people thought I was nuts and they didn't understand. It took me years to realize the returns. I was like, okay, this is working. So recently me and my wife sat down and we want to move to Sarasota, Florida. I've been going there on and off for years, right near St. Pete. And, we like the vibe. We like the family goodness there. It seems like a pretty chill place to live. There's some feelings of Boston there that kind of reminds me of the city of Boston. And we were about to buy this literally $800,000 to $1 million home, right? We were going to look at it. We were going to buy it May 1st to the 7th. My dad passed and my mom was left alone. And I said, I'm not leaving my mom to fend for herself during this hard time. Like, I'm going to sit still now for a couple more years till I see. Yeah. And I also had an epiphany. I said, why don't I take $150,000 and put it on a $400,000 Airbnb? Maybe I put on two of those and start making some income. I said, why would I get myself into a $6,000, $5,000 a month mortgage? I said, this sounds like death. You know, mortgage comes from the word mortuary, right? It's like it's a bond. Bond is bondage. I started researching terminology and words, and I listen to your brother sometimes too, like rent where you live and buy where you rent, right? And it started hitting me. Am I making the right decision? And I said the same thing you said. You don't ever even own it. I said, you could own $1 million home and not pay the $50,000 taxes a year, whatever it is, $25,000 wherever you live. And after 4 or 5 years, it's $100,000. You don't own the home, even though you paid millions of dollars for it. Like, so do you even own it? Like, and it made me wonder. Also, when I make returns in cryptocurrency, like I see some coins right now that I'm pretty good at it. I believe it. I may be wrong, right? I've lost. Don't get me wrong. I don't win every time, but I believe that there's some good technologies out here in the metaverse and AI that if I put my bags in the right places, it's going to make me so much more return than real estate. However, I want to diversify, and that's my question is how do you diversify? Like, how do you realize at one point, like for me, I can't touch these coins. They're fun. It's good to make money. I love investing. It's great. but I drive by homes every day and I love landscaping. I like the way the grass looks. I just like the way they painted it. I'm fascinated by the look of, the overall preparation of the real estate, and it's something that I've been drawn to my whole life. So even though I can make more returns maybe in another sector, I want to diversify into real estate. How do you balance that out? And I want to get into Note 42, which is not to show your company, but you're doing something that is interesting to me. As I start to grow and make more money, I want to make sure it's all regulatory, the framework is correct, right? And I saw that, there you go again, innovating into the digital space, right? And so do you own any Bitcoin at all? Like, you don't have to discuss if you do or not. I don't know. I don't want to be too personal, but I wasn't sure if you did actually own any cryptocurrency. And how do you diversify? Like, how did you decide to pivot? When do you pivot? And is it always about return, or is there something bigger behind the reason why you go into a different industry?
Well, those are a lot of questions, but let me see how I can handle a couple of them. First off, on the Bitcoin question, I've been investing in Bitcoin since 2016.
Excellent.
I think it was around $8,000 in. I also bought a lot of gold. I bought a lot more gold than I bought Bitcoin, which was a mistake in retrospect. The gold, I just sold the gold around 1900, I think. I bought it at 1100. People go, well, that was an awesome investment. Oh, was it? Not over 10 years. It's not an awesome investment over 10 years. I mean, I say I didn't lose my underlying value, but had I put that in Bitcoin, it would be triple. Look, I first off, on your diversity question, and I've been buying Bitcoin ever since. I bought a ton this week. I love these prices here. I think this is unbelievable opportunity. Okay, I mean, it's crazy. And I'm happy to do another show with you. Just go through the thesis of why I think that's true, even if you get a draconian government saying no. So I actually, on diversity, I think that is a little bit like the story on owning a house. If we go research all the wealth on this planet, very little of it's made through diversity. This whole 60-40 equities bond split, people don't make massive wealth by being diversified, by being hedged. I tend to be extremely consolidated in one space. And then if I'm right, that's my spaces grow. But I didn't walk into energy, do Bitcoin, and do real estate and all that stuff. I didn't do all. I did one thing extremely well and didn't really do anything else. For 20 years, I just became saturated expert that whether you like me or not, no one could take away my knowledge, my understanding of that market, and my willingness to pull the trigger on my thesis. That's a mistake a lot of people don't do. They don't pull the trigger. I mean, there's a lot of smart people on this planet with extremely good educations from MIT and Harvard. I mean, I've competed or they've worked for me, or I've worked for them for years and years and years. The difference between knowing something and being able to pull the trigger at the right time, they are very different skills. And I have seen many people, I know guys that really understand how a M207 works, a Barrett 50 cal. They can build the weapon. They can build the bullets for the weapon. They can build the scopes, but they give it to another guy to do the shooting, okay? Because he knows how to shoot the gun. He may not understand every piece of that weapon, but he's an expert in that particular field. So you don't let the engineer do the shooting, you let the shooter do the shooting. I think sometimes people get off their core skill, the God, what I call the God gift that everyone has, that 95% of the people never actually identify in their entire life. They get stuck in a job at an accounting company or a big corporate, and then they forget their real passion when they were 7 years old was to be an artist. but they got stuck on the 401k and they can never become an artist because they're not really doing what they're great at. In order to follow your dream, you have to be willing to follow your dream. You can't go, well, I'm going to follow my dream in 10 years. Like, how do you even know you're going to be here in 10 years? Okay. So I have done some radical things that are no consultant on the planet would tell you to do this, whether it's picking a career, moving. I walked away from a $7 million a year job, man. 600 people working for me. I'm in London. I have an expense account the size of, Jesus's purse. I'm hanging out with, like, ExxonMobil has to call me if they want to rent storage in the United Kingdom because I bought all of it over a lunch table, which is a crazy story, but you had to be at the right place at the right time, and you had to be so, like, saturated in the space and understand it that you could pull that off. And I've had to give up a lot of things, like, okay, I didn't invest in this deal over here because I was I think you cannot undervalue focus. So the first thing I tell people is, look, if you're really great at doing this, for instance, I think this is a business now, okay? What you are doing is bringing meaningful media, knowledge, intelligence, and you're going to get some crackers all over the place, some bizarre stuff. But we're bringing a new form of education to your user. And clearly, if everyone that's listening to this today had been properly educated with all the information they could possibly need to live and survive and thrive in their life, they would not be listening to you and me right now. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be. They would be going about their life and doing their deal. We have all been grossly uneducated, miseducated, misinformed. Yeah. And I'm not blaming anyone. Okay, I'm not saying it was Bob's fault, the Bush's fault, or whoever's fault. We now have technology. We don't have to talk about faults. We can change the paradigm. And the paradigm has to be access to as many people as possible without censorship. Let the cards fall where they may. And there's going to be some people that love me. There will be people on this video stream that will start bashing me and saying, oh, well, he's got the government after him. And like, if you get big enough, I have been threatened to have my passport rejected in the United Kingdom because they figured out I was getting ready to cost them about £3 billion of abusive profits, gross abusive profits they were making from the dumbest people in the market, Joe Consumer. Now, I don't do consumer businesses, but most of my businesses are there to help supply and demand actually speak to each other. Most markets that I go into, you will notice they have one thing in common. They are controlled by either a monopoly, an oligopoly, which is a collection of monopolies that all behave kind of similar. They're a little club, or a duopoly. And duopoly is two players that control a monopoly position. That would be Visa, MasterCard. The oligopolies would be all the oil companies back in the 90s. There was, 20 oil companies in the United States that controlled everything. They were then, by the way, the top 10 producing companies of the world. The top 10 energy producing companies of the world today, you wouldn't come close to them. It is not Exxon, Conoco, Mobil. It is sovereign countries now, right? Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, etc., and the United States. So the common thread was, hey, I like going into big club structures. It's extremely difficult to penetrate these structures, but this is one thing I do know. So when you start making an impact into these really large industries, phone call on a Sunday night, I'm in the United Kingdom. Hey, are you trying to do a deal with the Norwegian gas company? Yes, I am. Totally legal. Like one principle I have, everything I do has to be legal and ethical. I don't participate in illegal activity. I could have made billions and billions of dollars importing Russian gas into the UK. I never did any of that. You get a phone call. Hey, look, we know that you're doing this deal. You can do the deal. It's a legal deal, but tomorrow morning, your blue passport, your American passport that allows you to work here, it will be rescinded. I mean, one phone call. I'm 34 years old. I'm like, whoa, that's serious. 2 years later, I get a meeting from a major bank that most everybody here plays with, inviting me to lunch at Gavao in London, which is one of the most expensive restaurants in London. And the guy said, hey, look, if you keep doing what you're doing, we're going to call all the CEOs of the electricity companies. There were only 8. And we're going to take 20% of all the output from those power stations and turn it off. And we're going to squeeze you until you leave town. I mean, these are real stories, okay? Now I have the FTC banging on me going, hey, you did representments with the chargeback dispute system and it helped bad merchants. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're defending a merchant with his own data. So I think the message is, if you get big, accept that people are going to start taking shots at you. And I, for one, need all the energy I possibly can in not being diversified. See, like, not being diversified really places me in a position of being all in, and I am deadly when I'm all in. So I like, maybe it's because I have a limited attention span, but I like to be really, really focused. Now, if you look at my portfolio today, you will see an extremely diversified portfolio. But I think your user, and this is one of my problems with consumers and like my brother, sometimes I think my brother says things that the audience could misinterpret because they forget, hey, he's 65, dude. He's been doing this for 40 years. Of course he has 7 businesses. The difference between him and other people, most people would have gotten saturated with the money and said, okay, that's enough, I'm done. He just wants to keep building because he's that kind of guy. And now he's basically able to push out his income streams to other sources. But with that also comes some other risk. And he's experiencing some of that. Funny, you know, SEC's banging on his door. And hell, man, I think everybody's going to end up banging on our door. Because I think once some of these regulatory bodies don't make progress, they just call their buddies up and go, hey, why don't you do an investigation? So, you know, I think you just gotta, like, I think people misappropriate their energy. And they are looking maybe for options to make their lives easy with some of these divestments. And I just think it's not right. I don't know how old you are, but I'd get with somebody and go, hey, like, is that really the right strategy for you? Mm-hmm. For me, my strategy has been, and I could retire when I was 40. I retired when I was 41. I would not recommend that, but I needed some time off. I had built 3 major companies in, you know, the first 10 years of my career, and got really lucky and fortunate. I had some great people. Before you diversify, I would look at, hey, who's around you? Who are the people around you? Who are your mentors? Do you really know what you're getting ready to go into? Do you have a platform that actually can sustain you? That's been my biggest challenge, is finding platforms that with people value what I bring. And now I have to understand also, if I'm building a company, hey, the values I bring in a startup, which I think is my major contribution to the world, is I know how to build startups and get them going really fast. I also have to know, when is the time for me to, like, remove myself? The business now has become big, and let someone else run that, right? The guy that broke the market open may not be the best guy to actually run it once it's 300 or 400 people and it's established business. I see this very, very similar. This is happening in fintech. By fintech, I mean these technology solutions that are bringing financial solutions to the big banks, the Revoluts of the world, the Mondays, the N68s or 86s or whatever they're called, all these financial fintechs. The owner founder stays the CEO to them. And I think that some of these guys would do very well to their shareholders to bring in people that have better skills. So I'm not a guy that should be completing a painting, but I am a guy that, like, give me a blank canvas. That's the canvas. I always go to the canvas that's blank, versus one that's, you know, if General Electric or ExxonMobil hired me tomorrow, or Ernst & Young, my dream job would be, hey, just give me a division that has no P&L whatsoever, one guy, and let me kind of troll around your company, and let me build $1 billion business for you. And I think there's dozens and dozens of these that one could do. I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, you did 100%. I mean, fascinating. For me, it's really good advice, because people say I'm really good at charts. I look at charts all the time, and I do it all the time, man. I've been doing it for 10 years, obsessively, 7 years over obsessively, and the last 5 years, like, to another level that I never even thought I would hit. So you could say whatever you want about me. You know, I'm going to be going over the charts every single day. S&P, Bitcoin, futures, it doesn't matter. Like, and so I'm going to be right more than I'm wrong, because it's what I do all the time, right? And some people say, well, why don't you take this knowledge and you trade the stock market? And I look at them and I say, because I'm focused on 100 Bitcoins. Like, I'm focused in the cryptocurrency industry. Like, the second I take my focus away, I'm in two things. Like, and people think, well, trading is trading, but I'm even nichier, right? Because if you get that centered, and
that's not true though. Okay, I mean, a guy that's really great at trading FX cannot trade crude oil. They are totally different. You have fundamentals that are different. You have geopolitical matters that are completely different. You can't just trade one product and go, okay, I'm a genius trader. Maybe on the technical side, really, really short-term trading, but look, I spent the first 25 years of my life trading.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I do no trading today. Okay. Trading for me is a 24/7, 365 day job. It is not a part-time job. You can't own real estate with it. You can't have podcasts, in my opinion, if it's professional, real professional shop, right? I was with Garrett Soloway the other day. In fact, I'm seeing him tonight. And look, he looks at equities, and he looks at bonds, and he looks at crypto. And for him, it's just volatility. That's his play. He's a volatility player. He doesn't care. Like, he's chasing that volatility in the least risk, greatest reward possible. But, you know, he's not building other businesses that require a lot of management and time. Now, he is building some things around it, but it's a different job. It takes a particular personality. I think far too many people in crypto are speculators and gamblers, degenerate freaking gamblers, looking, and I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but
no, not at all. No, I see it all the time. That's why I try to instill discipline, and from what I've been through, because I need them to realize, like, there has to be more of a focused basis and a discipline here. It can't just, you're not throwing money in a casino, you know?
Yeah, it's your audience I'm really referring to. Like, if you're looking at the chart and you don't have a day job, I'm pretty sure you're not a professional trader. If you're just managing, you know, $40,000, you're not a professional trader. If you got 10 coins or whatever, I would say, hey, why don't you just, if you like this industry, why don't you just invest in Bitcoin? Go get a job with me. I'll teach you how to build a business. You then take some extra income, save 20% of your money, and you invest in Bitcoin. But you're not a professional trader, and you're going to get completely cropped by Goldman Sachs and professional guys that do this for a living. They're looking at all these arbitrages. So the innocent young guy just popping out of bed trying to trade boo-boo coins, you're a degenerate gambler, okay? You're trying to make money the easy way. You may not like me for saying this, but you need to go get a career that generates income so you can then make investments. And that's what me and my brother have done. We've taken businesses. I have two cars, okay? I have a van and a 2015 Range Rover.
Now, if you love this interview, no, there's more of it. There's an extended version of the interview at my Sam Price channel. Head on in, hit the link, hit the box around here, and head on over to my Sam Price channel where you can get the entire interview. There's even more gems that you don't want to miss.